Welcome to another podcast of Daily Geopolitics. People to people relations between India and the United States have been instrumental in forging a closer bilateral relationship. Around 5.4 million Indians, which include people of Indian origin, are present in the US. They form the third largest Asian ethnic group in the US, according to the Indian government data. Over decades, Indian Americans have been one of the most successful immigrant groups in the US, be it in the fields of technology, healthcare, or politics. Law abiding and lovers of their adopted homeland, Indian Americans have contributed immensely to the American economy as taxpayers and the American society. However, the return of President Donald Trump to power for the second term has come with its own set of formidable challenges for the Indian American community. Indian skilled workers who have been a major beneficiary of the H-1B visa program find themselves in the firing line of online hatred by MAGA nativists like Nick Fuentes. The interest of Indian students in the US seems to be declining, as suggested by the latest figures. Pandering to his MAGA base, the Trump administration has adopted a strict line on immigration. For starters, the Trump administration has overhauled the H-1B visa program, replacing the lottery system and also US Embassy delaying appointments. This has left Indian professionals stranded for want of an appointment. Mega supporters are calling for deportation of Indians, mass deportation of Indians. They haven't even spared Trump's allies like Vivek Ramaswamy or J.D. Vance's wife, Usha Vance, the second lady of the United States for that matter. To discuss these developments, we spoke to one of the more prominent Indian American community members, Dr. Adityanji. Like many Indians, Dr. Adityanji built his own American dream and lived it. He migrated to the US in 1991, built a successful medicine career there. Dr. Adityanji also heads geopolitical think tank Council for Strategic Affairs. He is a well-regarded commentator on issues pertaining to India-US relations. So first things first, there has been a lot of online hatred directed against Indian Americans in the US. Mega supporters like Nick Fuentes, as I mentioned in the introductory remarks, they have been at the center of it. They have been calling for deportation of all Indians. What's the sense in the Indian American community about these, this so-called racism that's directed against you?
I think it is of concern. People are definitely concerned. And you see this concern even in statements of a budding and upcoming politician like Vivek Ramaswamy, and also some of the Indian American Congress persons who have actually condemned this. So, yes, there is an acknowledgement that there is incipient uh, racism, but it is not just racism. There are other issues also, because if you look at the extreme right wing MAGA supporters, people like Matt Forney, the statements they have given, I think along with racism, there is envy, jealousy of the success, and a dose of Hindu phobia. These extreme right wing MAGA supporters or MAGA supporters, whichever way you want to pronounce the word, they are essentially right wing, ultra Christian fundamentalists. And besides, the racial aspect of it, that Indians are brown skinned, there's a religious undertone also. Because if you look at their commentaries, in general, in fact, some of the enlightened news anchors had told Vivek Ramaswamy that you are Hindu, you are not a Christian, you don't belong to Judeo Christian traditions. So it's a much more complex issue that Indian American community is facing. It's not just racism, it's racism combined with, success brings rivalries. Success brings jealousies, envy, and it appears that Indian American community, that is the highest wage earner at this point in time in United States, the median income of Indian Americans per annum is around $160,000 per year, and maybe the average median income is around $79,000 per year. So, out of all the ethnic groups, Indian Americans come on top, and that brings jealousy. There are certain other determinants also. Let's be very frank. The major migration to United States from India was that of educated class, whether they were doctors, whether they were college professors, engineers, tech workers, all that you have. But more recently, last 10 to 15 years, there's a lot of illegal migration. And we have to understand that. There is a strong undercurrent or strong uh, you know, overt hostility towards Sikh drivers, uh, truck drivers who have come to US illegally through Canada or through Mexico, managed to get the commercial driver's licenses, and some of them cannot speak English, were involved in fatal crashes on highways. That is creating problems. So it's much more complex than the successful model minority. We have illegal immigrants coming from mainly three states. One is Punjab, second is Haryana, and third is Gujarat. There's no reason for people to, leave your life behind because life is getting better and better in India with increasing prosperity and all. If you're just going to be a, truck driver or a gas pump operator or an illegal worker in agricultural farms, you don't have to come to United States. You can get those kind of jobs with much better facilities and all that sort of thing and much less legal troubles. So it's a very complex issue, but yes, Indian American community is facing this brunt of hostility, and it's not very simple equation because you will see that there are allies of these right-wing fundamentalists, and these allies are sometimes people of Pakistani origin. ISI is in overdrive, and you have a very strange combination of, you know, Pakistani agents or Pakistani diaspora breeding this hostility towards Indians along with Khalistani supporters.
Sure.
So you have undercurrents of multiple processes going on targeting Indian Americans. And this is what Matt Forney had said that, Indians will be targeted in 2026, the temples will be attacked, the people will be attacked on the street, and they should self deport themselves. And then he makes a statement that it will not be the white Americans who will be targeting Indian Americans. It will be African Americans, people of black skin, or it will be Muslims, or it will be Latinos. So it is a dog whistle. It is, dog whistle to ask certain groups to target Indian Americans, and that is of concern. And I think pretty much everyone in Indian American community, whether they belong to any of the parties, whether they are Democrats and Republicans, there's grudging acceptance that this is not correct. Yes, the system that is working against illegal immigrants, that is fine, but you should not be targeting legal immigrants just because of the basis of their color or their religion. I mean, calling person like Vivek Ramaswamy as anchor baby and asking him to go back to India. He's a born in US natural born US citizen. There are not just second generation, they are third generation and fourth generation Indian Americans at this point in time. And that is very, very unfortunate.
So you mentioned, Nick, you mentioned how Vivek Ramaswamy is being disparaged publicly in the US. We also heard a recent statement about the second lady of the United States when JD Vance threw an invite to Nick Fuentes for dinner, and he's like, "I won't have shit." I'm sorry to use that thing. So that's what he said. So that's quite disparaging, like degrading an invitation.
Uh, Again, it reflects that, narrow-minded, extreme right wing. Nick Fuentes is not a darling of anyone. He is an extreme. What has happened in last 10 years that there has been normalization of overt race-based hatred towards Indian Americans. That's a reality. And this reality has come out of jealousy of the success of Indian Americans, that they are in every field, whichever field they are in, they work hard, they follow the rules, they abide by the rules, and that creates jealousies. I would not say that in H-1B visa case or something like that, there may have been some other issues, but this was very unfortunate that you target the wife of the vice president just because of her, again, color of skin and national origin, because Usha Vance again is born in United States, natural born US citizen according to the US Constitution. So it is not just race based. There's a lot of discussion going on how JD Vance is sort of, maneuvering for 2028, presidential ticket, how he is trying to appease the Christian fundamentalists. There was no need for him to make statement like, I hope Usha converts to Christianity.
Totally.
When you make a statement like that, you are inviting trouble, you are inviting interference, you are inviting nasty comments from extreme right wing Christian fundamentalists who are not just concerned about the color of skin of Usha Vance, but also her religion. And I think in right wing spheres, this has become, you know, a kind of topic which should not be discussed. It's his personal life, it is his family, it is his children, it is his wife. Spare them, you know. Discuss his policies, discuss his politics, his suitability as a candidate for presidency in 2028, but don't bring his family into it. But unfortunately, he gave the opening by bringing that particular statement, and here we are.
Sure. Sir, just want to get a sense from you. You mentioned the online hatred. You mentioned the trend in the last 10 years, how this racism has become more overt. I just want to know, like, this online hatred, since we are in India, we read, Truth Social, posts on Truth Social, on X. Has this boiled on to this American street? Like, have there been, are there concerns like calling out names or racist attacks? There have been certain incidents that have been reported in the media, but what's the sense on the American street? If you could give a sense on that.
I won't say that there is like, direct, hateful attacks all the time. These incidents are rare. There was a lot of concern about Indian students who are coming to universities and all. There was string of deaths, unexplained deaths, and some of them were probably based crimes. Others were suicides and things like that. Uh, Having said that, there are attacks on temples. Why should there be attacks on Hindu temples? There was, like, in Texas, in one of the cities, the community actually raised a statue of Lord Hanuman. And there were very nasty comments by some Texas politicians, again, uber right wing Christian fundamentalists, saying that, these are demon gods and all that kind of thing. So it reflects the level of the society, and it reflects that not everything is hunky dory with US civil society. There are extremist elements that have been normalized by the current political discourse, which has become very coarse. And I think, unfortunately, Indian Americans are the brunt because, you don't fit into that Judeo Christian framework. You follow a religion that some of these people cannot understand. Uh, a philosophy which is very deep and not understandable to an average high school educated, blue collar, white Christian fundamentalist.
Totally. Sir, just a follow-up question to that. The son of Nikki Haley, I think Nalin Haley, like he likes to call himself Nalin Haley, but Nalin Haley, he's got onto this bandwagon. Now, you mentioned that this framework that is being propagated, the extremist right-wing framework, it's based on the color of skin. So what's the, I mean, is there a space for people like, Indian Americans with normal brown skin color who want to trying to integrate into this framework? So what's their space? How do you view, these people?
Uh, Nalin Haley is nobody. He is just trying to become part of this political system. Nalin Haley is biracial. Mother is a Sikh, father is a white American. He is Christian by religion, so he is trying to prove that he is more loyal than the king. So I mean, he's not a serious political player, but yes, when people like that bring out nasty comments, etc., that is unfortunate. But, he's not a heavyweight or anything like that. He just deserves the contempt he deserves.
Sure. And sir, as you head into the midterms, and you mentioned about the forecast made by some mega supporters about 2026, and as you head into the midterms, is there a concern that things would get more polarized given the type of politics President Trump has been supporting?
The politics in United States are already very highly polarized. Uh, Looking at the society, there used to be a middle, there used to be a center, a wise center that used to be very, very helpful in process of governance. What has happened in both the parties that extremists have taken over in both the parties. We are talking about mega ultra right wing extremists, but also in the other party, there are woke liberals who ran amok. In schools, parents were not sure how their children would be treated or how they will be indoctrinated at a very young age that they don't belong to the biological gender they belong to. And teachers were, kind of, doing things which were totally unethical. There was a thought police, speech police. You had to identify your pronouns and the stupidity of 63 genders. I mean, there were things on both the sides, and there's no wise center at this point in time, and that reflects to you in the political shutdown of the US government. The largest shutdown happened very recently this year in 2025. And yes, when the elections happen, whatever the polarization is there will become more extreme. That is likely to happen. And we shall see what are the results. In politics, 1 week is too long a time, so I will not say anything more than that. But yes, we are in very interesting times. There's a lot of fluidity, a lot of uncertainty, and entrenched positions. So we shall see what happens. But my hope is that after the midterm election, maybe the nation comes back to, sober governance rather than playing to the audience and playing to the gallery,
Sure.
which is happening from both the sides.
Uh, Sir, would just like to focus on the H-1B visa issue. It's been the bedrock of American tech economy. It's been widely recognized by American tech bosses, no less than Elon Musk. And I mention his name because he's one of the closest, tech allies of President Donald Trump. However, there have been some changes to the H-1B visa program. There has been a issue of delayed appointments, work Indian professionals being stranded in the country, and as well as the overhauling of the system, replacing the lottery-based system. So President Trump's agenda is making America great again. Why is he tampering with this H-1B visa program, which has been the bedrock of the American tech economy and has fueled the growth of the Silicon Valley for decades?
So I'm not surprised that this is being raised in the second term. If you were astute enough, you would have realized that even in his first term, he was harping on H-1B visa. In his first term, the filing fee for H-1B visa was increased from like $600-700 to maybe 3,000, 4,000, or $5,000 for a company per person. So this is not something new. This was in the offing, in the making. Every year, 65,000 H-1B visas are given by lottery, and another 20,000 are given to people who have master's degree from US university students. And I must say that Mr. Trump said that, that's a good thing. The 20,000 H-1B visa given to people with, master's degree or, PhD degree, because they want to retain the talent in the United States. But there's also, again, perception created in the mainstream America, in the civil society, that these people are stealing our jobs. And when you see the high tech companies having Indian origin CEOs, uh, I think the impression is that they are indulging in favoritism without realizing that these CEOs are not Indians, they are Indian Americans. Most of them are naturalized now American citizens, and they are doing what is best for their company rather than what is best for their ethnicity or narrow social group. So again, success breeds envy and jealousy, and some of that is getting displaced at the H-1B visa holders. Mind you, out of 65,000, 80 to 90% are grabbed by people of Indian origin. That is a reality. So you become a target. There is some fair criticism that sometimes the companies are, filling jobs with H-1B visa holders that for which you can find actually US candidates. For sales jobs or management jobs, you don't need H-1B visa holders. You need for, high tech STEM, you know, science, technology, mathematics, engineering areas, these H-1B visa holders. Uh, I must say that each country has the right to decide its own immigration policy. Granted, that's not a problem. So if US government decides there shall be no H-1B visa, so be it. Who will suffer the consequence? That is the question. From Indian perspective, people are focused, oh, people are stranded there. They are not stranded, they are living in their own country. They are not stranded. They are happy in their with their families and all. But who will suffer ultimately? It will be the US business. And after a while, there'll be some grudging acceptance. So what the companies have started to do, they have started to actually invest in India as an offset to, if you can't have H-1B visa talent in United States, you will outsource that. And this is what is happening. In fact, if you look at all these major tech companies, they have announced billions and billions of dollars in India for data centers, for other technological operations, R&D centers. So as a politician, one may take populist rhetoric and drum up a resentment using the fault lines of color, religion, national origin for electoral purposes. But ultimately, who is going to suffer? That is the question. And, you know, there's a way around to everything. Uh, I will cite a Sanskrit saying, Swadeshe pujyate raja Vidwan sarvatra pujyate. In one's own country, only the king is worshipped. But a learned man is worshipped everywhere. So US is closing the doors. Canada says, okay, you come over. UK is giving business professional visas to Indians as part of the bilateral FTA. Other countries like Germany, Japan are opening up. With the New Zealand FTA, bilateral FTA, 5,000 professionals. So go figure. Who is going to be the loser? There will be some transient disruption in the natural balance of flow because let's be very real. In a global world, it's not just, international free trade and trade of goods. There's a trade of services, trade of talent. All the economy is knowledge based. And wherever knowledge is appreciated, the knowledge will go, the talent will go. And if you block artificially the talent to come to your country, what will happen? That talent will be absorbed. You know, water always finds the lowest level, the level of least resistance. So ultimately, from a long term point of view, you are committing a mistake by making a short term political expediency by finger pointing at a particular group, but it may not be in the national interest of this particular country to block talent from coming.
Sure. Uh, Sir, I would like to focus on the tariff issue now. Uh, in India, we have spoken to several exporters. They are saying that the brunt of what the tariff policy is being borne by the U.S. retail consumer, since the end cost is being passed on by the importer in the U.S. to them. However, President Trump is saying that trillions of dollars have come into the U.S. because of his tariff policy. Even though there are, contesting versions, some say that inflation has gone up. There's inflationary pressure. Uh, as a U.S. consumer, what's your sense about the tariffs? Has it hurt the American consumer, or has it benefited U.S. or is it going to benefit U.S. in the long run?
I think it depends upon what perspective you have. If you are a MAGA supporter of President Trump, you will sing praises and say that yes, like he's saying that Japan is agreed to invest 600 billion, South Korea 350 billion, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia 1 trillion with promise to invest more. So he's counting and saying, oh, I brought so much of money. Has that money come actually? That is one question. uh, Tariffs, April 2nd or whatever, April 8th was supposed to be so-called Liberation Day. Yes, there is some increase in collections temporarily because of the tariffs. There's no doubt about it. And there's some talk about giving some dividend to the citizens, the poor citizens who don't make much money, $2,000 for the year, a dividend check, but that is more like a freebie, or which Indian context is called revdi, uh, to distribute for electoral purposes. The businesses have to absorb, eat the cost of tariffs, you know, and they did it for a short period of time. But if you go to the stores, you find that the prices are increasing. The president will not agree, and extreme MAGA Republicans will not agree with that. But yes, prices of goods are increasing. It is too short a time to tell what would be the impact on the economy. Reality is that US economy is on $38 trillion debt, external debt. And any politician who cares about the country will try to take strong steps so that that debt is minimized over a period of time. And it appears that President Trump has just one trick, that is tariffs. From the other perspective, since you are sitting in India, I don't think Indian government or Indian society should worry about the tariffs or their exports because they've already found the diverse, you know, sources for their export products, and actually the exports have gone up rather than down. And if I go down the lane of history, India is not sort of, stranger to tariffs from US. There was a time under President H.W. Herbert Walker Bush, George Bush, in 1989 to 1992, during his term, he used to have a trade representative called Carla Anderson Hill, who basically put India on 301 super enemy list. And they were 100% tariffs. We are talking about only 50% tariffs at this point in time. And at that time, the same rhetoric was used that if you don't open the gates, we'll open them with a crowbar. That was Carla Anderson's statement. And I distinctly remember that. So there's nothing unusual about it. I'm not surprised. US administrations, which come for 4 years, take very use very populist rhetoric. They've already sorted out with every other country, including China, except for India, because each government has their own perspective, and why should somebody cow down to others' demands?
What's your view about the India-US trade deal? It was, the negotiations for which began, which was announced during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the US. However, there's still no, I mean, a trade deal. There seems to be no solution in sight at the moment. India faces one of the highest tariff to the tune of 50%, including 25% for Russian oil imports. So, what's your forecast for 2026 on the trade front between the two countries?
So there was a talk about bilateral FTA with United States in Trump's first term also, and it went nowhere. At that time also, Mr. Trump was talking about India being the tariff king. India was called the currency manipulator. At that time, Mr. Trump had specifically highlighted the issue of, tariffs on Harley Davidson motorcycles, that it is 200% or something like that. And pretty much every administration in US is very obsessed with entering India's agricultural sector. Now, from Indian perspective, that is a no-go area for two reasons. One is that the economy is still, large proportion of people are in the agricultural field. Second is the GMOs. In US, the GMO is the norm. In India, it is not acceptable. And certain agricultural practices where you raise cattle by feeding them animal origin feed, that will not be culturally acceptable in India because of strong, you know, sort of belief in vegetarianism
Sure.
and all that kind of thing. So you cannot force a product on a consumer. Consumer has the choice. How can you force your product when it is not acceptable culturally? The other issue is that why would India buy high price energy from US when they can get it much cheaper from Russian Federation? Nobody in their sane mind will pay higher prices for any item, even in your household budget. You're not going to pay higher prices for one item when you can get the same item at a much discounted, place. So there is a little bit of, arrogance and capriciousness in demanding those. Now, American critique of Indian scene is that the farmers are subsidized in India. But farmers are also subsidized in US. President Trump himself gave $12 billion to farmers in subsidy. So US agricultural product is subsidized by the federal government. Every 5 years, the agricultural bill comes in which farmers are given subsidies. So US agricultural is highly subsidized. Then there are other issues. We are looking at a very narrow fraction, that India is making $50 billion in trade of goods because it is to US disadvantage. When you look at comprehensive economic relationship, there are other factors. Services come into picture. US actually exports more services to India than India exports to US. Then the revenue generated by Indian students. They pay the university fees 3 times the native students. Pretty much in every university, the Indian students, when they come as foreigners, that fee they pay is 3 times higher than the native students. Tourism. So if you look at the total aspects of a comprehensive economic relationship, probably that would whittle down to maybe 5 billion or 10 billion, the advantage India has. So the critique is somewhat unjustified. US has already, concluded trade deals with other countries. Specifically, I will mention China because Chinese, held them by neck, on rare earths. So Chinese had the weak point and they used that to their advantage and forced United States to sell or export advanced chips to China, on which there was a ban. And the tariffs also came down. So I am not very hopeful that a trade deal will come very soon because there are national interests involved. And one country will not succumb to the demands of the other. There has to be give and take. And if that give and take is not there, the negotiations will become prolonged, as we already know. You mentioned in February when Mr. Modi visited Washington, D.C., they said, in a couple of months, maybe by July, then maybe by August, then maybe by November. 2025 has ended. And I went back to the first term of Mr. Trump. Again, the same issues were being handled. So, to be highly optimistic, I think would be myopic. These are two large countries where they're with their own interests. They have totally different geographies, totally different systems, totally different interests, and they will not converge on everything. In fact, I had written a piece around op-ed piece around 2010, 2011, India US Tango part-time lovers. That, they are not partners by marriage. You will have certain issues on which there will be some convergence. So you can harmonize those issues and have, but it's not going to be a full-blown marriage between the two countries because the interests are totally different, geographies are totally different, geopolitics are totally different. One is a superpower, other is a developing nation, which is coming up as a regional power. And then you look at the geopolitics, United States every year is paying this year $686 million to Pakistan for upgrading F-16. These are the irritants. And if these irritants are not removed, yes, there will be problems in bilateral relationship, and that will reflect in trade and economic relationships. So I'm not very hopeful that a trade deal will come very soon. Having said that, Indian exporters are already diversifying their exports, and Indian exports are growing up. So what will happen is that Indian exports will go elsewhere. India is negotiating bilateral FTAs with a lot of countries. They have just negotiated with New Zealand, with UK,
Oman, sir.
uh, Oman. They are in negotiations, very advanced negotiations with the European Union. So it's not a calamity. The sky is not going to fall if India and US cannot have bilateral relationship because of political reasons. So be
Sure. Uh, so I can't let you go without asking a question about Pakistan. During, if you recall, during President Trump's first term,
He tweeted in against Pakistan, playing a double game with the US, taking in US money, then supporting terrorists. Right now, we are seeing a tango between the two. Asim Munir, he's been to the White House, and President Trump, he also tried to invite Prime Minister Modi at the same time when Asim Munir, in order to showcase, that he's a good peacemaker. And very shrewdly, Indian diplomats rejected that. Prime Minister Modi rejected that. Right now, sir, Pakistan seems to be in the good books of President Trump. Is that a leverage? And even with China, as you mentioned, China, he has already struck a deal with China, which was being which wasn't being expected. And as far as the Quad is concerned, there hasn't been any summit this year. We are not sure about if the Quad summit is going. India is supposed to be the host of the next Quad summit. So how do you see, like, President Trump flirting, if I may use that word, with India's strategic rivals? Where does that put, the long-term India-US strategic partnership? And by the way, the national security strategy by the Trump administration, India's role, it has been toned down in that strategy as compared to the last one released during the Biden era. So, yeah, what's happening on that front?
So, since 1947, Pakistan has been the favorite of every US administration. That should not come as a surprise. India and US had very bad relationship 1971. I don't need to repeat the history. Over the last 25 years, relationship improved, and there was some hope that yes, this verbiage or rhetoric of oldest democracy and largest democracy being natural allies and partners will go somewhere, but it's not going to go anywhere. US is a superpower and US has its own geopolitical interests. And when it wants to, you know, maintain its geopolitical interests, it'll do anything. And you are seeing that, relationship with Pakistan, despite all the evidence about terrorism and this and that. Right now, there's a concern in US that Pakistan has already gone in bed with China totally. So they are trying to retain some influence on Pakistan by, giving them money, supporting their IMF and World Bank loan applications. And of course, Pakistani army is willing to have Americans, mine in Baluchistan rare earths and other minerals. And of course, there is some talk about US having a nuclear base in Pakistan. So they have some, stakes there and they want to have that hold. So when you have this kind of geopolitical issues going on, obviously India as a concerned party will not be very pleased. So it is anybody's guess, how the relationship will pursue. Now you mentioned about Quad and Indo-Pacific. Unfortunately, Quad has become just a talking shop. It has not gone further. And there have been three variants of Quad from the original Quad to Quad 2.0 and Quad 3.0. And Quad is in suspended animation, just like SARC is. So I'm using that analogy. It's a harsh analogy, but I doubt whether, at least in President Trump's remaining 3 years, Quad will go anywhere. As far Indo-Pacific is concerned, again, you analyze it much more objectively, looking at interests of both countries. When you talk about Indo-Pacific alliance, what does US want from India? US wants bases from India to be used against China. Would any Indian government allow that? That becomes the question. Now, India has a land border issue with China that is known to everyone. Where does this Indo Pacific alliance help India to resolve that land border with China? You know, so looking from Indian perspective, I think these are some feel good things, but will they affect India's trajectory in a manner that is beneficial to India? That becomes a question. And unless there is honesty on both sides, I think Quad and Indo Pacific discussion will not go anywhere because it cannot be one way relationship that you use a country for your own geopolitical interests. The other country will also have certain expectations. And if those expectations do not get fulfilled, now we are talking about Quad, you know, GE 401 engine and 400, whatever, 15 or 12 engines, there was a delay. There was inordinate delay, 2 years, one reason or the other. Is that deliberate? Is that a containment strategy? One has to figure it out. So again, I will say these two countries may have some issues on which there can be convergence. They are not going to be allies. They are not treaty bound allies. US has its NATO alliance, which is a treaty, strongly written treaty. India is not a member of that. India does not believe in military alliances. So India will not get the treatment that a NATO partner gets. So to talk about, both these countries taking strategic partnership to the next level, it will go to some level. They are not enemy countries, okay, but there is a limit to which two countries can converge without sacrificing your own national interests. And as a practicing psychiatrist, I can see both the viewpoints and understand it rationally. They are not going to go in bed and say, oh, we are bound for life, you are married for life. It's not going to happen. Each country is a very, very ambitious uh, country with a lot of brain behind, the governments and their, national security establishments. And no country is going to sacrifice that, neither of them.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much for this, very uh, incisive discussion, and gave presented us with, quite a few viewpoints about the sense about the Indian American community, the future of India-US relations. It was a pleasure having you on Daily Geopolitics podcast, Dr. Adityanji. Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Darya.
Thank you, sir.
I hope I get chance to talk to you more about some of these issues.
Sure.